Before we dive into our tale of terror, let's take a brief moment to remember how important your support is to us. If you enjoy our content and crave more chilling tales, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. This small act from your end fuels our passion to bring you more spine-chilling stories from the darkest corners of the world. And today we have a truly horrifying tale for you. Imagine finding yourself alone in a secluded cabin, nestled deep within the heart of a dense, shadowy forest. The silence is deafening, the isolation unbearable, and then you realize you may not be as alone as you thought. Intrigued? Scared? Good. Now, let's begin our journey into the unknown. What if, one day you find yourself alone in an isolated cabin in the woods? Imagine the scene. A rustic, weather-beaten cabin, nestled deep within the heart of a dense, shadowy forest, far removed from the noise and chaos of the city. A place where the only sounds are the whispering wind, the rustling leaves, and your own heartbeat echoing in your ears. Our story's main character, a weary soul seeking solitude and tranquility, had traveled far to find this secluded spot. He was a city dweller, tired of the constant hustle and bustle, the never-ending whirl of activity, the relentless noise. He yearned for silence, for peace, for a chance to hear his own thoughts. And so, he found himself in this isolated cabin, surrounded by nothing but the wild embrace of nature. But as the first night descended, so did an eerie silence. A silence so profound it seemed to swallow up even the natural sounds of the forest. It was as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, watching, waiting. Our traveler felt a prickling sensation at the back of his neck, a nagging feeling that he was not alone. He dismissed it as city-bred paranoia, a remnant of living so long amidst the crowd, but the feeling lingered, grew stronger, became almost palpable. Alone in the cabin, surrounded by the inky blackness of the night, our traveler could not shake off the sense of unease. The silence seemed to press in on him, heavy and stifling. The shadows seemed to shift and sway, as if alive. The isolation, once a coveted respite, now felt more like a prison. His solitude was no longer comforting but unnerving. And then he heard it. A soft sound, almost imperceptible. A rustle, a whisper, a soft sigh. It was as if the cabin itself had drawn a breath. The unsettling realization dawned on him. The silence, the feeling of being watched, the strange sounds. They were not mere figments of his imagination. He was not alone in the cabin. Little did our traveler know, he was not alone. Have you ever discovered something that made your blood run cold? Imagine a traveler seeking refuge in an isolated cabin nestled deep within the heart of the woods. The beauty of solitude, the serenity of the wilderness, it all seems so enticing. But as night falls, a different narrative begins to unfold. The cabin, once a symbol of tranquility, takes on a sinister form. Objects begin to move of their own accord. A chair shifts from its place, a book topples from the shelf, and a cup mysteriously falls, shattering into a million pieces. Each event, while seemingly trivial, starts to form an unsettling pattern. As the darkness grows deeper, the cabin's wooden doors start to creak open and slam shut, all on their own. The eerie sound echoes in the silence, a chilling symphony of the unknown. The traveler, once at ease, now finds himself on edge, his heart pounding with each inexplicable occurrence. The quiet rustling of the night is broken by disturbing noises, sounds that should not exist in the isolated cabin. A child's laughter, a woman's sobs, a man's angry voice, all resonating within the wooden walls. The traveler's sense of dread intensifies. The fear, like a living entity, begins to consume him, feeding off his terror. Sleep eludes him, his eyes darting around the room, always expecting to see something horrifying. His heart races, his palms sweat. The once comforting solitude now feels like a trap, a prison that holds him captive. The fear is so intense, it's almost tangible. A thick blanket of terror that wraps around him, squeezing tighter with each passing minute. The traveler is caught in a vortex of fear and uncertainty. He feels it. The impending doom, the sensation that something terrible is about to happen. It's not just a feeling, it's a certainty. A premonition etched deep within his bones. The cabin, it seemed, was not as empty as it appeared. Do you believe in the supernatural? In the solitude of the isolated cabin, our traveler had his first brush with the spectral world. As the day's light began to fade, an ethereal figure started to take form. It was a semi-transparent apparition, a woman draped in a gown as white as the moonlight filtering through the cabin windows. Her face was obscured, shrouded in an eerie gloom, but her eyes shone with an otherworldly glow. The stillness of the cabin was broken by the ghostly figure's chilling whispers, a sound akin to the rustling of dry leaves in the autumn wind. The whispers were indecipherable, yet they carried an unnerving sense of desperation and urgency. The air turned frigid, making the traveler's breath visible in the dim light, and an inexplicable shiver ran down his spine. The traveler, a man of science and logic, was at a loss. He felt a cold dread creeping into his heart, yet his mind rebelled against the inexplicable. His senses screamed at him to flee, but his curiosity, his thirst for understanding the unexplainable, held him firmly in place. He decided to stay, not out of courage, but out of disbelief. He rationalized the spectral encounter as a trick of the light, a hallucination born out of exhaustion, or perhaps a prank by the local residents. He was in denial, refusing to accept the existence of the supernatural, the ethereal figure that seemed to inhabit the cabin. But as the evening wore on, the ghostly whispers grew louder, echoing through the cabin's empty halls. The spectral figure began to move, her movements slow and sorrowful. Our traveler could feel a profound sadness emanating from her, a sadness that seemed to seep into the very walls of the cabin. In the silence of the cabin, the traveler was left alone with his thoughts and the spectral figure. His skepticism began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of fear and unease. His heart pounded in his chest, his palms grew sweaty, and a cold realization began to take hold. But as the night fell, the reality of his situation began to sink in. What if the walls around you could speak? What secrets would they reveal? Picture this, a cabin shrouded in mystery, its history soaked in a horrifying tale of murder and revenge. Imagine the shock of our unsuspecting traveler as he stumbles upon this chilling narrative. The cabin, once a haven of solitude, was now a haunting reminder of its bloody past. It was no ordinary tale that the cabin held within its time-worn walls. It was a story of a family, torn apart by jealousy and greed. A tale of a man, driven by rage, who took the lives of his own kin. The echoes of their cries were forever etched in the fabric of the cabin. Now imagine the traveler's heart pounding in his chest, his mind filled with terror. He had been oblivious to the cabin's horrifying history, but now he was a part of it. The walls whispered to him, speaking in the voices of the deceased, begging for a justice that was long overdue. His decision was swift. He had to leave. He had to escape the tormenting voices that filled each room, the chilling whispers that echoed in the dead of the night. But as he made his move, the ghostly inhabitants of the cabin had other plans. The air turned icy cold. The whispers grew louder, more desperate. They didn't want him to leave. They needed him to stay, to share in their torment, to witness their pain. The spirits grew hostile, their invisible hands pushing him back, their voices rising in a deafening crescendo. Fear gripped the traveler, but he persisted. He had to get out. He had to escape this nightmare. As he pushed against the spectral forces, he could feel their desperation, their anger, but he could not stay. He would not become another prisoner of the cabin. In the woods, no one can hear you scream. What would you do when trapped in a haunted cabin? Our traveler, heart pounding like a drum on overtime, finds himself in this very predicament. Every fiber of his being screams for escape, but the spectral presence is relentless, a predator hunting its prey. He stumbles toward the cabin door, his legs feeling as heavy as lead, his breath coming out in ragged gasps. The cabin, once a sanctuary, now feels like a cage. The air thickens, and the temperature drops to a chilling cold. The ghostly figure, a shadowy wisp, looms closer. The traveler can feel its icy touch, a cruel reminder of the dire situation he's in. But our traveler is not one to surrender. He musters his courage and charges through the door, bolting into the pitch-black forest. Panic fuels his adrenaline, his fear turning into raw momentum, propelling him forward. Yet, the ghost is not one to be easily deterred. It continues its pursuit, its eerie wail, echoing through the dense forest, a chilling soundtrack to the desperate chase. His world narrows down to the pounding of his heart, the rustling of the leaves under his frantic steps, and the relentless ghost on his heels. He pushes harder, running blindly, praying for salvation. The forest seems endless, a maze of darkness with no end in sight. The woods swallowed his screams, leaving an eerie silence. How safe do you feel now, knowing such places exist? We've journeyed through the isolation of the cabin, the unsettling discovery within, the ghostly encounters that chilled our bones, and the horrifying truth that was finally revealed. We've felt the pulse-pounding terror of the escape, and through it all, we're reminded of the chilling reality of the supernatural. If you enjoyed this tale of terror, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Remember, there's always something lurking in the shadows.